They are, even these methods, there's something more advanced that they have that adds the texture of the skin to all the other, the distances, for example. And you can even sometimes get the pores that hairs come out of, or the pores that can be found in the skin. They throw that into both of these, and it makes things so that you don't necessarily need a full frontal facial picture, even though that is certainly a good idea. It actually makes these a little bit better, makes them more precise. The final method is what they call elastic bunch graph matching. This again, we need to know a lot more to understand it, but just the basic idea is what we take the face, the landmarks on the face, the eyes, tip of the nose, chin tip, whatever it might be, and we put it on a grid that is supposed to be gridded for a person's face. And each one of these landmarks will appear on a certain part of the grid, and it should be related to whatever else is on the grid, and the other, like the format of the grid of this graph of the face. So, and it may be a little bit off center for the grid marks, but we have to calculate these off center points. So then we have another picture, let's say from the database, and we compare how one is a bit off center to the other is a bit off center, how one relates to the points, how one of the landmarks relate to the grid, to the way the other relates to the landmark of the grid. That's a very, very generalized idea of how this works. We compare the two, and it should show a match, or maybe not. This does not require a full frontal facial picture because the way the landmarks relate to the grid is very similar, even if it's not full frontal. I do not know if we can even get a profile, but it does not even have to be a full frontal picture. If you at a certain angle, you can still get a lot of the data. So, just very briefly, there's the methods of getting information for facial recognition is appearance-based or model-based. The first two, the PCA that dealt with overlaying the pictures, was appearance-based. The linear discriminant analysis that dealt with the vectors, how the vectors are compared, that was also appearance-based because the vectors come from appearance. The EBGM, the elastic bunch graph matching, the last one we did when we put the face or the picture of the face onto a graph, onto a grid, that we actually compare the grids to a certain extent, how the grids relate to the face. So that's more of a model base because of the grids. We're not going to talk about this. This is a very, very generalized, very basic idea of facial recognition. There are problems, and bottom line is at this point they still don't work. They don't work well. If you have really good pictures, they'll work, but just a picture of a person in a crowd where the wind blows their hair, it really doesn't work well. So glasses will fool it sometimes. Hats, facial hair definitely fools it. Even sunglasses, it really throws these things off. Well, Clark Kent, people say it's called Clark Kenting, having a disguise that is easily see-through because all he did was put on glasses. Well, for facial recognition, it might have actually worked, but why he thought it works for ordinary people, I don't know. Anyway, it's a classic question. Why did Superman think he could disguise himself as Clark Kent just by putting on glasses and slouching? Anyway, also faces change. I mean, people get older. People, when they look older, they don't look the way they do when they're younger. So they change. So after, let's say, 10 years, all your data might be useless. So also, major problem is unclear pictures don't work. And a mask, absolutely. It's probably one of the best things you could do if you want to avoid facial recognition. So if you want to walk around with a Guy Fawkes mask, no. You will not actually be able to find. They will not actually be able to be picked out. It won't work. In the case of the Boston Marathon, as mentioned before, the police, when they heard about this and they realized that yes, it's really not a problem. We have videos of everything. All we have to do is check the videos, and we'll use facial recognition software. And we'll identify the people with no problem, without any problem. But it was a complete flop. They expected it to work. It failed entirely. They suspected they got matches that weren't really matches. They completely failed to identify the actual people, which apparently they had these people on file, but they tried using the facial recognition with that. Did not work at all. The bottom line is that it was the unclear pictures. Video cameras for a crowd, even the people who were close by that got videos, still didn't work. You need to have a really good close frontal picture to have a hope for this facial recognition to be good and to be useful. So right now we're safe from this if you are afraid of being identified. But still, the technology is advancing. I don't know how long it'll take before you may very well be as identifiable as any criminal with a mugshot on file. Anyway, let's get to this idea. This is not really biometrics, but again, we're talking about the future, so let's deal with this, even though this does include biometrics, but it's more like what the future, what the FBI is doing. It's called the NGI, the Next Generation Identification System. It's how to identify people, or a database to identify people very easily. So if you have somebody, a suspect, you'll immediately be able to, let's say, take a fingerprint and get the information about if he has a match immediately. It's making sure all the databases talk to each other, and even the IAFIS, the fingerprint identification system, the International Automatic Fingerprint Identification System. It's good. It's good. It works well, but it's being dropped to, again, the fingerprints aren't being lost, but it's being modernized, and the original system is being changed so that it's a more modern system. And part of the change, this NGI change, is that we're adding biometrics to it. Facial recognition is being added to it, and they are trying to get a database of a lot of faces and using the biometrics. However, they are at this point not going to be used to, for actually proving guilt or anything like that. Even there's a match, but they're just going to it just allows probabilities that if there's a match, we'll say it's more probable that they were involved in the crime. But we can't prove a person guilty or assume a person's guilty or suggest a person's guilty based on the facial recognition of the biometrics. The things that are put into the database are tattoos and scars. What's it going to cost us? $1.2 billion. Well, we can't really choose about this. We're paying for it anyway. It'll be ready in about a year and a half, 2 years, whatever it is, around 2021. I can't say 2 years. I have no idea when this video is going to be heard, if it will be heard at all. But at this time, it's about a year and a half, or it should be ready. But you never know. The government projects do tend to lag sometimes. This cost, I suspect, it's going to be a lot more than that. But anyway, those are the plans to get this NGI, the next generation identification system. Other improvements are what they call the IPS, the Interstate Photograph System, having all these mugshots of criminals, the profile and the full face pictures. They'll be suddenly available to people with whatever device is, some computer, some that it'll be able to connect to all these pictures. So if you arrest somebody on the highway, you see what he looks